Come forward. I am Rob, the great and powerful Rob. Who are you?
Sorry, Your Robness. It's just little me. I'm a fan for the team, and I really wanted to see, and kind of get your help. If there's something you can do, like, I don't know, like, take me back to the Tropicana. If I click my heels together, can you take me back to the Tropicana when we still had a roof?
Oh, it's Christmas week here at Baseball Biz on Deck, and Matt and Mark are here to stuff your stockings with all the great news about baseball. Is that too crude? Maybe. Oh, hey, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I've got my elf hat on, and I'm full of candy canes.
I've had an elf on the shelf, and he's trying to tell me a thing or two about this season. It's going to be up and coming. And he was hanging around the winter meetings, but I think he wound up in the lobby lounge too long. So I can't read some of the things he wrote on this long script. So we'll just have to come up with our own. Oh my gosh, brother. What a week. I mean, it's just been insane. We talked about the repercussions of Soto. My goodness. So what was going to happen after he said yes to one team and it wasn't the Yankees? AL East, there's a lot going on there. But Brian Cashman, he's made some calls. He's made some decisions.
Yeah, he's touched up three key areas for them. He added Zach, I said Max Fried. He added Max Fried, Devin Williams, and Cody Bellinger. And you're talking about, the versatility of Cody Bellinger is a huge asset in that case. I don't think he was exactly somebody that they had to bring in. They could have gone other avenues. But because of his positional versatility, he's really great. And Devin Williams, we all know from the Brewers days, he's a shutdown closer. Max Fried will give him the innings that they're looking for behind Jarrett Cole or alongside Jarrett Cole, depending on how you view them. And so, yeah, he's been busy. He's definitely, I think he's put Yankees fans at ease that he's going to address things as they come up. Unlike the Blue Jays, which are basically sitting on their hands right now.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a Blue Jay fan because they talk about, we were thinking about, we were even thinking about Corbin Burnes. We were thinking about Soto, and we were thinking about Max Fried. And it's like, come on, guys. You can think about a lot of things, but you got to make some action. You got to put something actionable behind that. But so Fried, they got Max Fried for 8 years for $218 million. And Devin Williams, he came with a trade. I mean, was it Nestor Cortez? A guy a lot of people love to hate. I just love him, period. But with his little dance stance up there on the mound, the way he kind of dangles himself, he winds up getting a balk more times than not, I think, when he does that little dance up there on the mound. But he's going to the Brewers. Wow.
Yep. And I honestly, I know he's involved in the deal, but I don't think the Brewers are focused on him at all. I think the deal was all about Caleb Durbin. I don't know if many people noticed his performance in the AFL and before that, to be honest, but he's turned himself into so there was talk before about whether or not he was going to be a Jon Berti type of player or a Dustin Pedroia type of player. And the more the season went on and the more it dragged through the AFL, the more he's looking like a Dustin Pedroia with speed, with like plus speed, which is just ridiculous. Like, if you've watched the interviews with Caleb Durbin, he's got a thick neck, and he just looks sturdy. He looks like somebody that's going to, just put a swing that's well beyond his stature, which is only 5'6", similar to Jose Altuve. So I'm really looking forward to see what he can do for the Brewers next year. He'll be in the mix. They've got a really versatile mix of infielders, so they'll move him around quite a bit, I imagine. But he's electric, and I'm glad he's not with the Yankees, to be honest.
Coming back to what you were saying, though, about the Blue Jays, what can they expect? I mean, I was looking at a post you had on Blue Sky earlier this week, and you had a list for AL East 1 through 5, and maybe it was MLB who came up with that list, who was going to be at what position as far as the power that they saw today. And the Blue Jays, I believe, was at the bottom of that list, weren't they?
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with their starting pitching. Although the front, 2 or 3, depending on how you view them, are strong, they've also shown cracks in the armor, and they're getting older. Kevin Gossman, Chris Bassett, they're in their mid-30s now, and neither of them looked dominant, to say the least, last year. They had moments of dominance. They could be dominant, but there's a lot of I don't know. And then beyond that, you have Jose Barrios, who's great. I love Jose Barrios, but you start looking at 4, 5, and beyond in the minors, and there's just not a whole lot there to support them through 162 games. A lot of their top pitching prospects have been hurt. So I just think when you start there, and then you have the issues that they have with scoring runs, and you add that into it. Yes, adding Andres Jimenez is going to help them defensively, and it provides protection for Bo Bichette, but they really need to add 2 bats at least to that lineup before I start taking them seriously and possibly move them around.
You and I both were talking about last week about, even looking at, oh my gosh, Vladdy Jr. and how long will he stick around after the end of the season? Will he still stay there? If they aren't making actions that look like to build and strengthen a team to be a championship team, even if we're not talking World Series, at least a postseason, something that's going to look strong enough that it's not going to be laying at the bottom of the AL East. It saddens me, but hey, that's what they do, or that's what they don't do. I was going back to the Brewers for a second and looking at Nestor going there, looking at also from the Brewers' perspective, looking at they lost Adames, so he's with the Giants now. And the reason I bring that up is he's trying to get another fellow Brewer to come to the Giants. That's Corbin Burnes. I haven't heard any more on what's going on with him, but he's a well sought after asset to any team.
Right. I think, to me, the Giants would be great for Corbin Burnes because he needs parks that are going to keep the ball in, and that's why he did really well with the Orioles as well. But I personally feel like when you're looking at a team going for it and really set on making the next 3 to 5 years, the years that they are competing, I can't think of a better place for them than the Cubs. I think they are lacking just that front end ace starter, my game one guy. I don't think they have it yet. And I think it would solidify their entire rotation all the way through. I think they have the money now that they've made a few moves to shed some salaries, Cody Bellinger being one. So when you're looking at their roster, their outfield is elite. It's great. Love it. Their infield is very, very, very solid. There's still players that need to prove themselves, but I think you look at the team as a whole, that front line guy is what they're missing now. And I think Corbin Burnes would be a perfect fit.
Well, let's take a look at some other folks too, Matt. As I was looking as far as free agents, I think Tommy Pham's still out there, good old former Ray, Charlie Morton, another former Ray, is out there. And a few other guys, maybe a little long in the tooth. And it's you can never trust anybody over 30. That's what they used to say when you were under 30 years old. And now everybody says that about baseball players. But see, who else we have out there? Kirby Yates, he's 38. Scherzer's 40. Wow. I don't know, brother. I see these folks, and I can say they've delivered so much, but we can't necessarily expect the same amount of innings, the same amount of speed. But we've talked in the past too, we're looking at players like Nady Eovaldi, who still has some speed, but has so much control. He can locate that ball. I mean, he can control it where it's going to be more than most. What do you see when you look at some of these older guys? Do we think we're going to see decent contracts? Do you think any of them would be still out there on the limb when it's all said and done this year?
The older pitchers are kind of interesting because none of them have announced their retirements yet. You still have Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Charlie Morton, a lot of guys that can provide maybe 120 to 140 innings of really, really high quality. But what you'd be basically aiming to do is to get them at their best for the playoffs, because that's when they're at their best and they're most valuable to your team. So when you saw the Dodgers last year survive like the insane number of injuries that they went through on the pitching side, or the Rangers had to deal with theirs and sink because of them, you know right away that you never have enough pitching.
Yeah.
So I think some of these guys might wait till mid-season. You remember Roger Clemens used to do that? He'd get 20 millions regardless when he signed late in the season, just because then he'd save his bullets and he'd still get his money. So I think Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander in particular are guys that you're going to see possibly use that route, just because they're worn and they're not really, I don't think, feeling their best to kick off the year, and now go through an entire season might be asking a lot from their arms. So Charlie Morton, though, is one that I could see a team still banking on a rotation role if he deems himself healthy. I think he's very intriguing. Another guy that stepped up his game last year, which is, I don't know where he's going to land and how much, is Patrick Corbin. Like,
Hmm.
he's a lefty. He's a really great clubhouse guy. Went through heck with the Nationals. He just had a really hard time for a while of finding, his stuff again. But now he seems to have found it. He was doing great with the Nationals, who were competing. I mean, he could go back to the Nationals, but if need be. But I think he's one guy that could really help a team. Let's say like the Braves. The Braves are looking for a patchwork of people to fill in a few spots and to give them some experience after they lost a few big guys. Maybe he'd be affordable for them. Jose Quintana is another one that's hanging around. You have Sean Manaea. There's still a lot of innings to be settled, and we're a month and a bit from spring training,
Yeah.
a month and a half, let's say. So these guys don't have forever to figure it out and decide where they're going to go.
Yeah, it's going to be a pitchers and catchers report, sooner than we think. And I look at some of these guys and I think, I mean, Charlie was with the Rays a while back, but even then, a lot of people considered him a veteran. And they bring a certain knowledge to the team. And I think the younger players looked up to them and learned things from them that they're not going to learn anywhere else. So I think there's a real value to having some of their players on their team. And like you're saying, save the bullets for uh but that's one way of looking at it, is they're saving what they are able to bring to the game if they come in a little later in the season. So I don't know. We'll see, man.
One thing that I would add too for the Rays, they need some leadership, and you need guys. They can't leave it all to Shane McClanahan, and they can't leave it all to Yandy Diaz to be the leaders. They need more experience. So two guys that I think the Rays can afford, that they should bring in, also to help the young guys as they come up, from the minors, and they're not going to get in the way of anyone. I don't think either of them are looking for more than a 1 year deal. Would be Charlie Morton and Jason Heyward.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Jason Heyward is just like, when you talk about plus makeup, both him and Charlie Morton have it in spades. He's got a great arm still. Performed really well in Yankee Stadium, in Fenway, and in Camden Yards. So through his career, he's done really well at those parks. I think his bat would play well in that Yankee-ish stadium that the Rays are going to be playing in. So I think, he wouldn't be demanding everyday playing time. And so he would give you another guy that you can plug in when you're going up against the lefty, and or late in the game when they put on the lefty from the pen. I think he would show guys how to work, how to do things. He has a lot of experience he's been through some great organizations. Started off with Bobby Cox with the Braves. He ended up with the Dodgers and spent a lot of time there. So in between, he's been to great organizations as well. I think he has a lot to share, a lot of knowledge, and he'd be a great addition that wouldn't break the bank. And then when Chandler Simpson's ready to come up, they can decide, if everybody's healthy, who they want to pass on and who they don't. You could actually become a tradable asset at the deadline as well.
Well, there's no doubt his wisdom, and I think even his easy manner would be beneficial to all those young Rays.
Mhm.
You did bring up something though that I love to talk about, and that is what's going to be happening with the Rays this upcoming season. And we had a little bit there at the beginning, but basically that comes because I've recently seen Wicked and The Wizard of Oz, and yeah, and you pile on top of that the commissioners being in Pinellas County the other day. It's like it came to a wild nightmare. That's where that came from. So, but thinking about the team playing over there in George Steinbrenner Field. So your team is the Tampa Bay Rays, and it's not Yankee Stadium, but it's George Steinbrenner Field that you're going to be playing in. I think it's about 11,000 in seating. They may make it larger. I don't know what they can do in such a short period of time. But it is going to be interesting. We've talked about how they're going to try to work the schedule, and they have less days in the heat, but there's no way of getting around some of the issues with the weather. I had the good fortune of talking with some people from the Rays organization about a week ago in just kind of a group setting. And one of the people was with the ticket office. I said, tell me a little bit. So it's going to be a little different this year, isn't it? Yeah, it is. I said, are you talking with your season ticket holders? Are you telling them it's going to be a more intimate experience? And they said, yeah. I said, that's a good way to spin it. But if you're looking at buying your tickets, it isn't like you just go online and you go ahead and pick. The way I think they're setting it up, the way they're setting it up is you have to put up like $100 just to be almost in a lottery to get a seat. That gets you a place in line. And then I think they start reaching out to the people for the highest price tickets and the highest price things first. Once they get those filled up, then they'll go down the line and continue to sell the rest of the seats, is my understanding. So this is going to be very interesting from a business perspective. And that they got one extra day to get things set up, I guess, from the time the Yankees have finished up their spring training there till the Rays are able to come in and start getting things, have something of a Rays feel in a Yankee stadium. Oh gosh, it's going to be fun.
Yep. I think the interesting thing to me is the whole who owns the development rights in the area that they want to develop. And I think you have a lot of interests that don't really recognize who has the best hand. Everybody thinks that they have what we call the nuts in poker. They think they have the nuts when really they don't. The person who has the nuts is Stu Sternberg. He gets to say what happens simply because they own a stake that is so significant in the redevelopment of $6.5 billion in the region that they really can't ignore any gripes that he has. And that's the sad truth. The counselors can look brave and loud and clear, but in truth, they're powerless. If they don't agree to terms with Stu Sternberg and do basically what he wants in the area when it comes to funding the stadium, he can pull the plug on their development and just, be the cog in the wheel that won't turn, and go elsewhere and do other things and let his money grow and the stake in the property value go up. And, he won't be at a loss. So in this whole fiasco, that's the sad truth of it all, is that we can all say what should happen. We all know that the way it's going on is not ideal, but I think the hard truth is that council basically has to come to an agreement with Stu Sternberg and the Rays on covering a portion at least of the overruns, even though the agreement they signed said no. Now, having said that, how is the taxpayer group going to take that if they do or when they do? Are the politicians going to be strong enough to be able to spin it as, oh, look, we're saving a $6.5 billion investment? Or are they going to be run up the flagpole to say, you actually, went back against the agreement that you signed with the Rays and you gave them something that they shouldn't get per the agreement. So, Yeah, it's such a weird situation.
Well, I'll quickly say that one of the opponents, I think it's Chris Lafala on the commission, he had changed his vote from a no to a yes. And the reason was partially from a conversation he had with Rob Manfred. He was impressed enough to think that Manfred was going to be able to right the ship and let's try it again, right the ship and direct it, captain the ship. But as you stated, I believe the owner, Mr. Sternberg, is the one who's going to be able to do that. I think you and I both have seen some comments back and forth about, once this happened before with some owner and they basically MLB said, yep, we're taking the team away from you. I don't think that they're going to take the team away from you. I think there will probably be some push from MLB to Stu and Matt Silverman. Do I think it's going to be anything that's going to shake the world? No. I think that the people who voted for this will have a leg to stand on because, in a sense, if you're one of the commissioners, well, if you didn't vote yes now, Stu does get the land development no matter what. And that would have been that. So I see that they have a defense that they can put out there for any criticism they may get. But I don't know where it's all going to land, and I don't really care anymore.
I hear you, man. I really do. I think it's so sickening, the dollars and the milking of the taxpayers has just become, almost a farce. It's gotten to that point where it's just, okay, enough. Like it doesn't make any sense. Everybody is sickened by the price of tickets, the price of parking, the price of concessions, the price of everything that pays for all of this, and it pays to pad everybody's pockets. They hand you $500 million, and then you're still sticking out your hand for more. I just think, at some point you have to say no. You have to say, hey, if you want to leave, leave. I think what happened is Rob Manfred said that if the Rays and Stu Sternberg decide, no, we don't want to pay the cost overruns, I think MLB said, we will pay the cost overruns, and then we will force him to sell the team. I think that's what Rob Manfred said. Mm-hmm. I think that if MLB will put their foot down as to and they did it for the sister city concept. They said, no, you're not doing that. So I think that's what they will do again. They'll say, okay, you won't pay this cost overrun, that you signed a contract that said specifically that you would cover this.
Mm-hmm.
So now we will cover it, and we'll find an owner that's worthwhile of being in Major League Baseball, and we'll carry on. And to be honest, there won't be any skin off of MLB's back because they've had to change how many rules because of the Rays and Stu Sternberg. And I guarantee you the next owners aren't going to be pushing that envelope the way Stu did. So I think, they'd be getting a stone out of their shoe if that were to take place. So I think MLB is almost daring Stu Sternberg to not pay that extra money for the year that they're going to have to wait extra for. And he's spending around $200 million. I really don't think it's that much. Maybe you can sell me on 25 to 50 million. But when you're a billionaire, you're supposed to be able to cover that, especially with the number of investors and ways that taxes have of actually nullifying the majority of that to begin with. I think sticking out your hand at that point is just a slap in the face to all taxpayers who deserve the money more than you do.
Yeah. This past weekend drove over St. Pete and Paso Grill, and then the beach over there. I'd say that looking at some of the businesses in that small little part of Paso Grill, discovered that probably 80%, 75% of the businesses are reopened. And the devastation, a lot of it's been cleaned up, but there's still, you can see it's immeasurable. So when you see the starkness of that, and you see what seems to be almost gluttony about worrying about, oh, look at me, Mr. Almost a Billionaire, in the pain I'm in. and it doesn't sit well. So I I really hope that it gets to a situation where MLB does say you got to sell the team. So we'll see. Anyway, I've talked about it longer than I wanted to, but I did want to say
Forrest Gump said it best. He said, "That's all I got to say about that."
I'm with you, brother. Oh gosh, but I am looking forward to seeing the team playing over at George Steinbrenner Field. I want to go over there those early days and get before all the hottest part of the year comes to be and catch a few of those games. And the same person I was talking with the Rays, I said, well, all I could think was when Vec was with the Rays for a very short period of time, did fireworks inside the Trop. I said, at least you'll be able to do them there. He said, oh, yeah, we got that planned and a lot of other things. So it will be interesting to see what marketing, what promotion, what fun that they put out there in the game that'll be different at this over there with Mr. George Steinbrenner's Stadium, Legends Field. I'm looking forward to it, Matt, actually.
Yeah, I think they should have the dog's landing pad in right field for Brandon Lau, because I think he's going to terrorize that short porch or whatever you want to call it in right field. I think he's going to hit a lot of home runs, and the health is always going to be the major issue. But the Rays have 3 left-handed bats that are really intriguing. I also think Logan Driscoll and Ben Roosevelt will do well in this park as left-handed bats, depending on which one is used as the backup catcher. But Brandon Lau, Josh Lowe, and Jonathan Aranda are really going to have, if they're healthy, which are the 3 that were hurt for how many months to start this or 2024? If they're healthy to kick off the season and play to their abilities, anything can happen with the Rays because they have one of the stronger staffs in the American League.
Well, yeah, I think about this too. You have them healthy. You have them over at George Steinbrenner Field, which in many ways replicates what you would see at the Yankee Stadium in New York, right?
Right.
So basically, you wind up playing all those games there at George Steinbrenner, but when you play the Yankees, you're going to be the same field that you've been playing at home in many ways. It's about the distance of how the field is, whether it be right field, left field, et cetera. I'd really be curious to see if there's actually a benefit to having playing at the same field twice, so to speak.
The whole season is going to be a quagmire of between them and the A's of who can actually, build the roster in the best possible way to match the field in a short period of time. So the Rays have already been making some moves and reshaping some of the roster. Danny Jansen will be a great addition. He'll strengthen the lineup. But I think the park aspect, sometimes it gets overblown, right? Like somebody will highlight a player and they'll say, oh, look, he should be grabbed, by this team because he's done well in their park. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not going to face the same pitching. He's going to be on the other side of the So there's a lot of ingredients that go into it. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a lot of fun though. And it's going to be very strange to have a very Yankee centric entity host the team that is from that city and should be in that side, but isn't. Like when you look at that entire scenario, it's so backwards that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It just mystifies me. I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I mentioned earlier before the show, I have Janet Marie Smith on the show, and she's been, basically an architect, engineer, designer for Camden Yards and some different things that went on with Fenway and now Dodger Stadium. And I think I'm going to have to ask her about planning and just about the limitations of what you're able to do, whether it be the land that's there, the restrictions of what MLB says you have to have distance in certain fields. I'm really curious. You got any ideas, anything specific you think we should probably ask her?
I do. It's funny you should ask. Because we know that expansion's around the corner, right? So I don't know if she has any involvement with the the franchises that are looking at potentially making a bid.
Mm.
But I know, like Montreal, for instance, when they went through the process of the sister city stuff, they had to get vetted from MLB with what their plans would be, where the stadium would be. I think there was two or three different versions that ended up, being thrown around. But ultimately, they're getting a new roof, like you know. So my questions to her would be: has she been involved in the Salt Lake City, area for stadium ideas, Nashville, and also how would she redesign the inside of the Olympic Stadium in Montreal to make it a more, MLB worthy location? Because now that they're getting an $870 million roof, what they need is a new revamped inside altogether. And I know the Rogers Center went through. So are those things that she would want to tackle? And what would her ideas be for those?
Well, that is a great question. I'm definitely going to offer that up to her when I speak with her tomorrow. We'll probably have her on next week. I know next week's Christmas, so that may be the show.
Or on Christmas Eve. I recommend that. That's
Yeah.
always the best.
Hey, in Christmas Eve, as far as traditions and such, do you and your family, do you have certain things or places you go for the
We do.
holiday?
We actually have lobster dinner every Christmas Eve. A lot of my wife's family are lobster fishermen, and so the in-laws like to purchase some lobsters from them. We have a big feast, and then we go to church basically that night and have the big celebration. I think my daughter is playing on the piano at the ceremony this year, so it should, or at the service, I should say ceremony. So it'll be an interesting time, but that's our main tradition. And then the next day, the festivities, the opening, the presents, and everything else happens here. And a little tip to people that don't have lobster often, we always so we do a creamed lobster, right? And it's on this bread, 2 layers if you're like me and you like a lot of lobster, and it's a creamed lobster, but we always keep some extra. And if you mix it in with eggs in the following morning, and you do scrambled eggs, it tastes wonderful. So that's what we have for breakfast is lobster eggs. And then we also have mincemeat rolls, a whole bunch of things because we do it slow. We're slow paced in the Christmas morning. It's very one at a time, opening the stocking stuffers all the way around. That usually takes us till lunch. We have some pie. And then we get on to the presents and we do the same routine all over again. And then we have our main meal. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I love that, man. I love a good traditional Christmas. And, with most of our kids all grown, it's different. But I did love that. And of course, the time when, both my parents and Karen's mom was still alive and getting everybody together, around the tree and going to church. Oh my gosh, all that and leading up to that, the whole thing, whether there were the Christmas concerts, the gathering of friends and children at the different events leading up to Christmas, all that was so much fun. So I certainly miss that now, being a little bit older, but my wife has done a great thing as far as making sure she brings the family together. So some in Tallahassee, some Orlando. We're here in Tampa Bay. Others up in Louisville, Kentucky, where we hailed from originally. And my father, my brother and his wife, and my nephew are all up there. We all gather in Louisville, and we're up there for about a week. We do the Airbnb, and we just get together. We feast. We have a dinner, a nice dinner with all the fixings. And it's different folks cook up different.
At this feast, I need details. I need to know what you're eating. Like, what is the main, like, if we didn't have these three things, it would not be a worthy feast.
Well, we'll have a ham. There'll be a ham that was either get a heavenly baked ham, a heavenly ham. It's got one of the brands actually around here, or a nice big turkey. Or sometimes we wind up getting both of those. We don't actually usually cook those up. My son-in-law might. He's getting very creative. He's a good cook as well as a great law enforcement officer, but he does a lot. And my daughter, she does also. She cooks up there, whether it be new potatoes and mixed in with some other vegetables, just all kinds of things. There's Oh, and then for the dessert, it's the was it pretzel, jello, and cream cheese
Oh
dessert.
man,
Yeah,
that's
you ever seen that?
no, I haven't. I'm gonna look now.
It's like a cream cheese. It looks like a cream cheese. If you're looking at it, one of those Pyrex casseroles, the bottom has a nice cream cheese look to it. Then it has those little mini crackers, excuse me, mini pretzels crunched up, and it's put in with like a red jello, strawberry jello, and it's cut up pieces of strawberry with it, and it is just to die for when you have that all together. It's amazing. So that's some of the fun things we do on
That sounds
at
like a
Christmas.
strawberry shortcake on steroids.
Oh, it's something, man, and it is something. But kind of getting away from the personal aspect, one thing I think about with each Christmas too is on Christmas Eve in 1969, a man sat down and wrote a letter. And that man was Curt Flood. Now, he was with the St. Louis Cardinals and had been with them for several years. I think actually it may have been 12. This is a letter that Curt Flood wrote to Bowie Kuhn back on Christmas Eve, 1969. And here's how it goes. It's also CC to Marvin Miller, who was a union man for Major League Baseball, and Mr. John Quinn, who, my ignorance, I don't know who the man is, but he's on there as well. Dear Mr. Kuhn, after 12 years in the major leagues, I do not feel that I am a piece of property to be bought and sold, irrespectively of my wishes. I believe that any system which produces that result violates my basic rights as a citizen and is inconsistent with the laws of the United States and of the several states. It is my desire to play baseball in 1970, and I am capable of playing. I have received a contract offer from the Philadelphia club, but I believe I have the right to consider offers from other clubs before making any decisions. I therefore request that you make known to all major league clubs my feelings in this matter and advise them of my availability for the 1970 season. Sincerely yours, Curt Flood. Well, man, that was the first shot across the bow to where free agency was able to come. And he used to sit down and talk about put the kids on it and maybe read Dickens' Christmas Carol. And that was part of a ritual each year. Now, this is my own personal ritual. Each year I read this because it reminds me that we're still, as far as being able to control their own destiny. If you are a baseball player, it takes 6 years at the show, at the major league level, before you can be a free agent and choose what you want to do. This was basically the first shot across the bow, like I said, of trying to make that change.
It's interesting because I grew up, I was in Canada, and Canada was always a very hockey-centric place to grow up in. And in our case, it was Ted Lindsay who was the linchpin of I wouldn't call it free agency. What he brought in was the players union, and that's what they needed in order to get free agency and all the rest of it, because it empowered them to get to that level. But those are really intriguing people that went against the grain, had the what they both have that is very, very, very similar is a self-awareness and courage that others were unwilling to match before them. Now, in some cases, it might just be that they weren't aware or didn't have the issues that caused those people to get to the levels that they were not obviously prominent in their minds enough for them to act. So there might have been others that were courageous enough. They just didn't really have the motivation that these two people had. But I love those kinds of stories, and I love the looking back on them. And you can reflect on that story today and still see some of the issues that he talks about being present in the game, which is just astounding to me at how slow moving baseball can be sometimes.
Well, it is sad, and it's we'll have to get Lou Schiff on here again. I mean, we've talked about it before. I know he's busy until the end of the year. I had an author on here at the moment. His name escapes me on a book about Curt Flood. And it was interesting because during the trial at the Supreme Court level, these guys, these justices are passing notes to one another on a score that's happening at the same time with a World Series game. You know, it's like, oh, they can't see that they need to help a person. Their interest in the game is great. And they want to know stories. They want to know everything. But it's because of that kind of, I'll just say it, selfishness, that selfish enjoyment of the game to the point of not recognizing the people that are in it and what they're giving you, and to give them freedom to be able to have a decent labor market. So
Do you know what was his motivation from that though before that? Like I know the story that I knew, because I didn't know this story that you just mentioned. The story that I knew about Curt Flood was when he had that issue in Game 7 of the World Series, and then afterwards, the Cardinals didn't want to pay his salary.
yeah.
They offered him like $5,000 when he was supposed to be making like, I don't know, 100,000 or something like that, and so he had to like fight for that, that money, and basically abstain from signing the contract for a while. I don't know how long it was exactly, but it became a contentious thing where I think, those kinds of situations are what fed that motivation, that he was like, no, 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 this is enough. Like, this is craziness that's happening and it's not right. Like, we're not, I mean, we've all seen the movies of 8 Men Out and a whole bunch of other situations that happen with owners. Like, owners have never been warm and cuddly in Major League Baseball. We have a few that hand out baseballs now and stuff like that, but I yeah, it's amazing. Somebody should do an entire series. Like, I remember in hockey, they did this series where they had all these great people or impactful people about the game, and they had this whole beautifully done series. I know the NFL does it all the time. Major League Baseball or somebody should do one on Major League Baseball and ownership, especially because the number of stories and intricate kind of things that happen, like you mentioned before, the Dodgers situation with the McCourts, and there's just an endless, numbers of ways you could go that would get people really intrigued by just how messed up ownership of baseball teams is. It's almost like a soap opera. General Hospital has nothing on Major League Baseball. you know?
Oh gosh, man, I hate it when you hit the nail on the head with something like that, and you're so accurate, and it hurts. But it's oh gosh, yeah. Well, we're trying to mix it all up here with the Christmas show on Baseball Biz on Deck, and we've got Scrooge. We've got a wonderful, wonderful Christmas meals, and my gosh, man, you've got me wanting to come up there again. I enjoyed lobster so much when I was up north traveling with my job. But my gosh, the ability to see things, and you're right about Curt Flood, going back to him for a moment, there was some contention about what they were willing to pay him and what they're willing to do. And at that time, your job was renewed each year with your team, period. You had to sign basically with them each year, or you weren't going to be in Major League Baseball.
Right.
But they could do what they wanted with you. They could trade you. And that, you're right. That's what kind of precipitated the whole thing with Curt Flood. And he had a kind of a tragic life going on too. I won't go into details of it. Anybody wants to find out, there's plenty there to find on Curt. But I still look at that letter as a beginning and also as a goal, because I don't think that making a young player play for 6 years before they can be a free agent is anything realistic. You can talk about how much they pay these people when they make, and I'll say, yeah, they're only making that much because the owners are rich enough to pay them that. But to not have the control of your destiny for 6 years, it kind of sucks.
Yeah, I think the arbitration moving arbitration up makes sense. To me, you can maybe say, okay, after 2 seasons under your belt, so, and you can just basically add it up to, the games. So after 324 games, you are eligible after the end of that next season to be a free agent, or not a free agent, but for our arbitration, sorry. And then so basically I think that arbitration works well in getting people's salaries up. Like I think you're seeing it now with Vladdy Jr. and a bunch of other guys. Like before Otani signed his big deal, he made I think $30 million like through the arbitration process. That is impactful. So basically, then you can look at for 20, some odd teams that would have forced a trade, right? But the Angels were just so stubborn that they weren't willing to trade him. But I think you're right. Like they do need to keep refining, and they have made some changes where they have certain awards for the top rookies if they're used from the beginning. If there's a lot of incentives that have been added over the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah, but I do want to add one thing, one last note on the player that we've been talking about. He was the first player to get a hit in Canada, right? And so that's how I know the name originally, because it was at Jerry Park where the Expos were playing, and then they were the first franchise in Canada, and he had the first hit. So yeah, that's his claim to fame in my eyes. That and what you just spoke about today.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still shaking through. That's cool that you're bringing it up with the Expos. I had forgotten that. I remember when I read the book but I've forgotten it. I'm one of the things that brought up to mind too, because you and I were talking before the show about Nolan Arenado, and in a sense, he's trying to control his destiny right now, because the team wants to go ahead, and he's got a no trade uh, clause in his contract, and which allows him some flexibility. But
Yeah, apparently he said he only wants to go to winning clubs. So the Cards got a deal together with the Astros, and he said no. So what does that mean, that he doesn't think the Astros are a winning club? I don't
maybe,
know. It seems like I don't know if it's a slap in the face at the Astros. There's a contentious issue out there right now where I should say contentious issue. It's more of a conspiracy theory that he's holding out for the Dodgers. He really, 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 really wants to play for the Dodgers. That's his Christmas wish. He wrote Santa a letter. He mailed it out in November. The elf on the shelf told him that it had been sent and read, and that he was not on the naughty list, so he should be getting his wish.
I love it.
I don't know if they've lifted up all the seat cushions to find the coin that would be required to cover enough for the Cards. Uh, I don't know. They did this. Do the Dodgers need another big name? Like, really? Come on. Like, what is this? The players are starting to act like the NBA, where, I want to play with this guy, and I want to play with this guy, and I want to play with it. What? I'm sorry, but I just like drives me insane. It reminds me of when you were in the schoolyard, and all these people were kept picking their friends, and it gets old.
Yep. Yep. Well, you gonna put the star on the top of the tree, buddy?
Yeah, the star on top of the tree. Let's see, what would be the star right now? And so what is the best aspect of baseball today? What is the star that we can wish for?
Oh,
I don't know.
oh man.
Oh, no blackouts. That's my Christmas wish. End the madness and broadcast everywhere. Just give us access to the freaking games. I don't care if there's 5 ads on the screen as we watch it. Give us access to baseball.
Hey, and I'll put one more on top of that wish, and make it through one source.
Oh man, now you're asking too much, Mark. You've gone over the top. Santa doesn't have that much magic in his hat.
Oh gosh. Well,
I hope you're right. I really do hope somebody steps up and gives them enough money to make that happen.
oh gosh. Well, I'll tell you what, Pat. Well, I'm looking forward to Christmas. Sounds like you got good times playing with your family. Should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Should be a good time. I think the stockings are going to be full. I know there's a lot of unfortunate people out there, and that, I hope that everybody finds some solace or some place safe and warm to go to get good meals. And I know this time of year is hard. Like, I know it, I'll just share it a little bit. My first 7 years in the military, I spent away from home when it came to Christmas, and that was the hardest time of the year, to be honest. Like, yeah, you get a phone call home, you get this, you get that. It's not the same, and it does hurt a little bit more when you're not around family and everything else. Some people don't have a family to be around, and so one of the things that I learned, through the first few years was to not be shy about saying that you're going to be alone. And more than likely, somebody will open their door to you, so that you do get an opportunity to be around others. I had situations even as far as somebody inviting us to just stay overnight, Christmas Eve, and be there when they open presents and have the meal there with them, yada yada yada. And I was with a roommate at the time, so both of us went over, and it just ended up being like we were two added strangers who brought food to the Christmas morning. So both of us were single, couldn't be with our families because we were ready duty ship at the time.
Wow.
And yeah. So all I'm saying is if you're listening and you're out there and you want to keep a good eye out for those that need a little bit more care than you may otherwise notice, this time of year.
Well, thank you, man. I think that's well worth saying. Thank you for sharing that too. And thank you and all the others for your service. It means a lot to all of us, and I don't think we always think about it, but thank you. And I'm so happy for you and your family for this Christmas. And it is a time of year I cherish. So thank you very much for joining us here today on Baseball Biz on Deck for this special Christmas edition. And we'll go out with a little bit of jingling there again, jingle bells, and hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. We look forward to talking to you guys again real soon.
Merry Christmas. Oh.
Just a reminder, you can find Matt at matgermain.bsky social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com.